This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Hello and welcome to Piano and Keyboard Artist, where we discuss the artists related to pianos, keyboards and synthesizers. If this is your first time to my channel, I'm assuming you're here because you're a Duran Duran fan, then please hit the subscribe button and join this awesome community. Now in this video I'm going to talk about Duran Duran in a very scratch the surface type of way. They've been around for over 40 years. I'm a huge Duran Duran fan actually. A lot of you probably don't know that, but there is too much to talk about. So all I want to illustrate in this video is I just want to talk about some of my favorite songs, but having said that I like loads of them, and I just want to sort of demonstrate some of their songs to you on the piano. So stripping away all the, the synthesizers, the vocals and everything, we're going to focus just on the fundamentals of the melody and stuff, because that is a fascinating way to listen to songs, is because it allows you to focus in on just the melody and hear it in a very, very different way. And this channel is very well known for doing just that. Before we jump into the content of today's video, I want to thank our sponsor Skillshare for helping us keep the lights on. Now you guys know I will never ever get behind anything or endorse anything that I do not believe in or use myself, and I've been using Skillshare myself for several months now to brush up on my video editing skills, and I've also recently just used it to brush up on my Logic Pro skills. Now I've been a producer and been using Logic for a long time, but this guy Thomas George has helped me a lot in just brushing up with some of the finer things in Logic and all those little things that I may have overlooked over the years. The interface on Skillshare is very, very easy and slick. You can look for anything you want, and it is a great platform to learn pretty much anything you want. The first 1,000 subscribers who click on the link in the description below will be entitled to get Skillshare absolutely free for a limited period, and you can see what an awesome platform this is to learn absolutely anything you want. So you've got nothing to lose. Get down there, hit that link and join the Skillshare community. Right, for now, let's jump into today's video. With a career spanning 40 years and, some of the greatest songs in pop history, Duran Duran have certainly earned their place. I was watching a documentary once in where Nick Rhodes said that they had a very clear idea when they formed Duran Duran. They wanted to be very good looking, and they were, and they are. But it wasn't only to be about the look. It was they had to be good at what they did. Now, fortunately, the proof is in the pudding. 40 years later, they're still going. It's not because of their looks. It's because of a combination of everything. Duran Duran ticked every single box. Now, the philosophy was something along the lines of they wanted to incorporate the elements of groove, funk and disco, all those elements, but also overlay it with a sort of German electronic thing, because obviously Nick Rhodes was very inspired by the sort of German electronic Kraftwerk thing. Now, on the subject of the sort of German influence, let's have a look at Planet Earth. You've probably never heard Planet Earth played just on the piano like that before, because we're so used to hearing it as a full song, and it's a great song. But this is a classic example where I feel this was very much Kraftwerk German influenced, and I'll illustrate. Listen to this. That's Kraftwerk's The Model. And then Planet Earth again. Now, obviously, you can see it's a completely different melody, but the vibe and the feel, to me, are quite similar. In fact, the model, which is... that's the melody, but that's obviously the wrong key. It is played in this key over here. She's a model and she's looking good. The reason I'm playing it in this key is because I want to show the association to Planet Earth. So once again, here's Planet Earth. And the model played in the same key as Planet Earth. Planet Earth. So once again, it is a completely different melody, but it has the same sort of stern, sort of German sound to it. Now, you may not agree with me, but to me, that is one of the songs where I can just really hear the sort of German Kraftwerk influence. And it's not necessarily only on the synthesizers. The melody as well has that kind of vibe. Anyway, you may or you may not agree, but I do love the Planet Earth song. And I'm going to quickly just bang it out on piano just to sort of show you how melodically rich it is without all the, you know, the keyboards, bass, and synthesizers. It is a very simple structure. It is really just from the D to the F to the C. But nevertheless, it was their debut single and it was a great song. Now, there are many sort of stylistic things that Duran Duran use when, you know, crafting melodies and stuff. And one thing I like about Duran Duran's chord progressions is that they don't seem to go out of their way to make things just... They're not trying to be weird, but there is a beautiful sort of simplicity to their and a familiarity to a lot of their chord progressions. However, the way the chord progressions flow are still quite unusual, although they are not completely off the wall. And when you take a lot of their big songs, as I'll demonstrate, and you strip away all the instrumentation, there is a real sort of classical kind of feel to it. Now, I must emphasize once again, I'm not classically trained. I've never had a music lesson in my life, and I do approach music in a very sort of emotional way. And therefore, my explanations are very easy to understand because I don't know all the theory because I'm self-taught. But I do know what works, or I think I know what works. But let's look at Ordinary World. Now, Ordinary World is a great song to illustrate this. Ordinary World is one of those songs which we've all heard so many times, some might say it's overplayed. Ordinary World is one of those songs which is so popular that even if you're not a Duran Duran fan, you'll know it. We all know it. Now, I just want to quickly play you some shell chords. A shell chord is just the outline of it, just to kind of show you the chords, which is... Now, what's very, very interesting is when Nick Rhodes will play a chord, John Taylor obviously often does this thing with the bass. What I love about John Taylor, and we'll do a video on him separately, is I think he is one of the most underrated bassists in pop. I just think that, you know, sometimes you get these what they call real musicians, and they'll be like, oh, you know, he's a bassist in a pop band. If you analyze John Taylor's bass playing, it is very, very clever. It's like all great things, it's understated. There are a lot of things that John Taylor does in the music which are, you know, he's not overplaying it, but he does these really sort of funky, groovy things which you may not notice within the context of the mix, but if you took it away, you would notice it. And I'm going to demonstrate that just now when we get to, there are many examples, so I'll demonstrate that. But if we look at Ordinary World, from those shell chords, I just love the part, and this is typical, where Nick will be playing a certain chord, and then John will play a bass note, which is, it's part of the chord, but it's not at the root. So if you're not a musician, I've probably confused you, but if you're a musician, you'll understand what I mean. If you're not a musician, let me try and explain to you. So if we take Ordinary World, it starts off on the B here. These aren't the exact chords, by the way. I'm just doing shell chords to flesh it out. At this point where Nick will play an A, instead of John playing an A as well, John will play a C sharp over there. So instead of it sounding like this, it'll sound like this. Once again, instead of John playing an A, John will play the C sharp there to give it that kind of feel. And there are many examples of where John does that, and this video is not long enough to go into detail there. But just listen to Ordinary World if we just play it on the piano. Just listen to how the chords move, and once again, if it's just on the piano, you're only focusing on the melody. Now, when it comes into the first verse, Came In From a Rainy Thursday, it comes from the C and then it goes straight to the C sharp. Forget about all the technical stuff. Just look at the feel. Just feel how sort of like classically timeless it feels when it gets to. And onto this. See, so from that, and it just lifts by a semitone. How sort of classy and sort of like classical does that sound? In comes this iconic little riff here. That is, as simple as that is so fundamental to the song. Now the second time around, just listen to how the chords change. Hear this. And once again, I just love this. Nick playing the A and then John playing the C sharp. Once again. And just notice how instead of John playing the A there, he plays the C sharp here, and it gives it that feel. we'll get carried away. But I will do a song analysis on Ordinary World and other songs where we dedicate a whole video just to one song. But of course, that is if you guys are up for it. Let's think of another song now. Oh, well, I'm just thinking of the Wedding album, which is one of my favorite Duran Duran albums. I'm thinking of the track Come Undone. What a track. Absolutely beautiful song. And one thing that is beautiful about the way a typical sort of Duran Duran song changes chords is that the chords tend to sort of like, they kind of like, and this is not technically speaking, but they don't sort of jump. They kind of seem to like, very often, sometimes a Duran Duran song can kind of change key without you even knowing, because the way it's incorporated, it's just so musically interesting. It is so different, like if we were to use the crude example of, let's say, generic mainstream millennial pop, something like la 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 la. That isn't a song, but it's just that typical generic mainstream millennial pop kind of crap that they do these days. Duran Duran obviously nowhere is light years above that, but the way the chords change, as we saw in Ordinary World, they just, there is a classiness to it, but a simplicity to it as well. But under that simplicity, there is a sophistication, and there is enough in there to keep even, people who are very musical, there is enough there to keep them interested. You cannot dismiss this as throwaway pop Duran Duran. And that is why when you strip it down at the piano like this, you can see exactly what I mean. But let's have a look at Come Undone, one of my favorites as well. You see, just playing it like that, you can just hear, once again, I'm trying to illustrate that if this was written 500 years ago, it would still be a beautiful melody. As modern as their production is and as slick as it is, strip everything away and you can see that the foundations are great songs. And that is how you last 40 years, my friend. It's more than just smoke and mirrors. Duran Duran are the real deal. Sticking with the Wedding album, I've got a slight bias towards the Wedding album. There is a song on the Wedding album called Femme Fatale. Here she comes. And I always loved that song. It's the... Here she comes. Better watch your step. She's going to break your heart in two. It's true. I love that song, I really do. And when I first heard it, I just thought it had a real sort of familiarity to it. It reminded me of something from the 60s. It reminded me of a Beatles song. And it's funny, when I've spoken to people, they also said, oh, it reminds me of a Beatles song and I will give you a explanation as to why I think it sounds like that. It's because it goes from a C to an F. Here she comes, better watch your step. Now, it is very difficult to go from a C to an F without sounding like Imagine, because John Lennon almost kind of like he's owned the C to the F progression. Of course, we all know Imagine, and that is the similarity. It's because, obviously, imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. And if we go, here she comes, better watch your step. The same chords, that's why it has that familiarity to it. Damn you, John Lennon, you did kind of claim that progression for yourself. It's funny, there are so many chord progressions in music, but go from a C to an F, it's always going to remind people of Imagine, albeit subconsciously. But here's another one I'm going to throw in. Check this out. So here's Imagine. And then here's Femme Fatale. Now watch this. Slip inside the eye of your mind. Don't you know you might find a better place to play? We're on to Oasis now, but don't look back in anger. Femme Fatale is also that, but what Femme Fatale does is, because if they just went, here she comes, better watch your step, if they did it that way, it would be too much like Imagine. But Nick Rhodes, in his brilliance, just added this simple little riff to it, which is simply just, and then you get Femme Fatale. In fact, and if I just play that on just piano, with everything stripped back, just listen to how timelessly beautiful and classical it sounds. Right, let's look at another melody now. One of my favorites as well. Obviously the out on the top plains, the glides are moving. Did I get the words wrong? Sorry. Love that song, The Chauffeur. That is another song, like pretty much all Duran Duran songs. Strip all the great synth work and everything else away and listen to the melody. It is a great, great track. And now if we take the elements of it and we kind of just run off with it, like what I like to call a piano improvisation, it's kind of like when you take the melodical ideas that are there and you kind of just free flow with it. Not to the point that it becomes jazz, but you just kind of roll with it. And when you do that, you can really see how this just leans itself into that kind of classical kind of sound. It's out of this world. I love this song. Sing blue silver. When it gets to that sing, sing blue silver, it really, I love this song. It really, really goes off on a tangent, kind of like I'm doing now. Let's look at A View to a Kill. Now, this is a great example of how Nick plays his keyboard riff and John Taylor plays this kind of bass riff, which you may not notice. What I'm about to, what I mean is when I play it in isolation, you're probably going to go, oh, I didn't notice that. But now what I'm playing now is, once this video is finished, go and listen to the song and you will actually hear what John Taylor is doing as follows. Something like that. And that's when Nick goes. And when you play that over the, it gives it that slightly discordant feel. And John Taylor does that a lot. As I say, we'll do a video on John Taylor, so I can kind of go into more depth what I mean by that. But I was watching A View to a Kill probably about a year ago, came on the telly, and I mean, I've always loved this song. To me, this is the ultimate James Bond song, I always think. But while I was watching the movie, they've obviously not the version with Duran Duran singing, but when they have like the love theme and they obviously play a variation of that melody. So when you listen to it played in that way, and then you realize how beautifully melodic and rich it is. What I love about this song is it seems to be changed. Once again, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not musically trained, but it seems to be changing key a lot of the times. But it's not abrupt. Once again, it's not that predictable. La 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 la. Yeah, that real sort of millennial commercial pop crap. Right, so let's look at A View to a Kill, and I'm just gonna. This is not note for note. I'm just gonna kind of vibe it here, just to get the idea across. And when it gets to the Nightfall Covers Me, then you've got these interesting chord changes once again. You know, they're not, Duran Duran don't do the typical, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 times in a row. They will do something, and then the second time round they will change the chords as as I showed in Ordinary World, and that just keeps their music really interesting. So when we get to the Nightfall Covers Me, it's the Nightfall covers me, but you know the plans I'm making. In this example where Nick is going, nightfall covers me, but you know the plans I'm making, Mr. Taylor, instead of playing the F note here, which is the root, he would play the B. So it would sound like this. Nightfall covers me. So you see, Nick is playing the F, but Mr. Taylor, John Taylor, is playing the B. So it gives it that, it just fills it up, and it's part of the scale, but he does that a lot where he doesn't play the root note. Usually with bass, traditionally, you always play the root note, but he will play the next note up or something different. And he's a very, very interesting bassist to listen to. So from that point, and then I love the way it comes to this G sharp here. And also onto the D sharp. So it's just great the way you started here. Nightfall covers me, but you know the plans I'm making. And then we get to a sacred wire mystery keeping inside. And by the time you get to the chorus, it's, you know, it's kind of like stepping. It's like changing, and then it goes up in semitones. It's really, really brilliantly put together. And you know, I think it's like all great designs. They're very simple, but when you look deeply under the hood, you can see there's a complexity to it. And hey man, there is so much more we can do, but I just wanted to scratch the surface. This is a scratch the surface video, and I'm leaving it over to you now. What do you guys think of Duran Duran? What are your feelings? You know, they've just released their new single. Let me know what you think about that. Do you want me to talk more on Duran Duran? If so, which subject would you like me to address? Anything you'd like to say about Duran Duran? If you're brand new to the channel, hit that subscribe button, introduce yourself. I would love to meet you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you so much for your support. I'll see you next time. Adios.